Well, very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Friday morning devotional. I'm Mike and I'll be leading this session. Okay, today's reading is Esther 8 verses 9 to 17. And it goes like this. At once, the royal secretaries were summoned on the 23rd day of the third month, the month of Sivan. They wrote out all Mordecai's orders to the Jews and to the satraps, governors, and nobles of the 127 provinces stretching from India to Kush. These orders were written in the script of each province and the language of each people, and also to the Jews in their own script and language. Mordecai wrote in the name of King Xerxes, sealed the dispatches with the king's signet ring, and sent them by mounted couriers who rode fast horses, especially bred for the king. The king's edict granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and protect themselves, to destroy, kill, and annihilate the armed men of any nationality or province who might attack them, and their women and children, and to plunder the property of their enemies. The day appointed for the Jews to do this in all the provinces of King Xerxes was the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. A copy of the text of the edict was to be issued as law in every province and made known to the people of every nationality, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers riding the royal horses went out, spurred on by the king's command, and the edict was issued in the citadel of Susa. When Mordecai left the king's presence, he was wearing royal garments of blue and white, a large crown of gold, and a purple robe of linen, fine linen. And the city of Susa held a joyous celebration. For the Jews, it was a time of happiness and joy, gladness and honor. In every province and in every city to which the edict of the king came, there was joy and gladness amongst the Jews, with feasting and celebrating. And many people of other nationalities became Jews because fear of the Jews had seized them. So we've reached a very, very uplifting moment for the Jews, and we can only imagine what getting together and feasting and celebrating is like, because one day we might be able to do that again. Normally for these sessions I use the New Living Translation, which I find easier to read. However, I've elected to use the NIV this time. The New Living Translation is a bit odd. It gives some specific dates. For instance, the 23rd day of the month is given in the New Living Translation as the 25th of June. Not quite sure how they get to that. And the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, is given as March the 7th. Again, I'm not quite sure how you arrive at that. But March the 7th happens to be my late father's birthday. And also in 2020 was the last time I took a train ride. So it's a very auspicious date. Anyway, returning to the passage, what we have here is an early version of the internet. The decree was broadcast far and wide using the technology of the day, which wholly comprised human endeavor, with the spreading of the word and translating into all the spoken languages, which is quite a feat of organization. We're used to Google these days and other products where we can just send things that auto-translate around the world. But I am old enough to remember the telegram boy on a motorbike who dashed around with pieces of paper which said, you can come stop on the day in question, stop. And that was the end of it. And that cost several pounds to get that sent. But on the 11th and 12th of July 1962, you'll remember this, Ken, won't you? was the very first live transatlantic broadcast between us and America. And it was hosted by a Richard Dimbleby, father of David, using the new Telstar satellite. And it was also subject to a #1 hit in the same year by the Tornadoes. Anyone remember that? As you know, I've got connections with Bletchley Park through my mother's wartime involvement there, and communication there at the time was cutting edge, quite often with motorbike riders. And so the decree was transmitted around the kingdom using the cutting edge technology of the time. And as we have seen, the decree itself came about as a consequence of the influence placed on the king by Esther. And we should note the methods used here. This was not a tub-thumping and argumentative approach, but a gentle persuasion that fully recognized the king's ultimate authority. Now, on Wednesday at 11:48, President Joe Biden became the 46th president of the USA after what has been a 4-year roller coaster ride under the unpredictable rule of the 45th president, whom I'm sure we all know and love. I'm sure some of us disagree with or lack respect for Donald Trump, but we should respect the office that he held. He was once, after all, the elected president, and several million people voted for him this time round. And the same should apply with our view of Boris Johnson. We might not respect him as a person, but we should respect him in the office he holds as Prime Minister. And there lies the difference. And so it was that Esther, giving the king respect and attention, wins her argument with the king and saves the Jews. And as we read on, there are great celebrations at this redemption with parties and feasts, the sort of thing that follows a time of great difficulty. Similar events occurred here in 1945, May 1945 on VE Day, and will no doubt occur again when the current crisis finally becomes under control and we can all dance in the streets and feast together. But what happens after the parties and celebrations are over? Well, major life events do change us. There are permanent changes. This COVID event will change certain things forever, just as the world changed after 1945. Much of the world has been governed under what is called, under the influence of what is called the post-war settlement. The United Nations came about in 1945. NATO was formed in 1949. And love it or hate it, the EU was founded as a consequence of the 1940-45 war. So my thoughts on this passage are as follows. How do we win arguments? How do we get our point of view across? By fist thumping or by persuasion and with respect for the other person's position or point of view? Note how Esther achieved her results. And number 2, after the victory party is over, what happens next? It's so easy to use God for the emergencies and forgetting when it was all over. The history of the Jews was success and failure. They had great successes, but then they seemed to snatch defeat from victory and get themselves into trouble again later on. And number 3, are we ready for the permanent changes to come as a consequence of the current crisis that we're in? Finally, this crisis does give us opportunities. I think I've said that in previous talks. People are genuinely worried or frightened. Their trust in technology has been battered. Their trust in human endeavour has been dented somewhat. Surely, as I've said before, this is the 21st century with internet and with all sorts of wonderful things. So why are we back in the days of the plagues of 1348 or 1665 or the 1918-1919 Spanish flu? Surely all these things were in the past. Surely these days we have the technology not to have all these things. Well, obviously not, it would seem. So let's pray for the opportunities when they arise. And let's use Esther's example of quiet, loving persuasion. As Heather Lawrence pointed out on Tuesday, Esther won the king's favour, and in doing so, she won everyone else's favour. And of course it says in 1 Corinthians 13, if I could speak all the languages of earth and of angels, but didn't have love for others, I would be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. Love is patient, love is kind. You know the passage very well. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wrongs. This is how we should get our point of view across. And it's the way Esther did that and was successful. And here's an alternative version. This is where I'm going to try and share the screen. So beware of a disaster here. I was put onto this by Fiona Markey when I told her what I was talking about today, when I happened to meet her on the common. And it is this. Can you see that? This is Aesop's Fables. Have you heard of them? And it says this. The north wind and the sun had a quarrel about which of them was stronger. While they were disputing with much heat and bluster, a traveller came along the road, wrapped in a cloak. Let's agree, said the sun, that he is the stronger who can strip that traveller of his cloak. Very well, growled the north wind, and at once sent a cold, howling blast against the traveller. With the first gust of wind, the ends of the cloak whipped about the traveller's body, but he immediately wrapped it closely around him, and the harder the wind blew, the tighter he held it to him. The north wind tore angrily at the cloak, but all his efforts were in vain. Then the sun began to shine. At first his beams were gentle, and in the pleasant warmth after the bitter cold of the north wind, the traveller unfastened his cloak and let it hang loosely on his shoulders. The sun's rays grew warmer and warmer. The man took off his cap and mopped his brow. At last he became so heated that he pulled off his cloak and, to escape the blazing sunshine, threw himself down in the welcome shade of a tree at the roadside. And the moral of this story, gentleness and quite kind persuasion win where force and bluster fail. So, final point is this. It's okay to argue, to persuade, and to be forthright and assertive doing it, but it must be done in love, total respect and humility. If we want to win our fellow man over, we need to learn Esther's approach of quiet and loving persuasion. So, in the words of the pre-war jazz song, which was reworked in 1982 and became a hit for Bananarama and Fun Boy 3. Do you remember them? It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it, and that's what gets results. And that's it.